We voted on Patreon, and the crew wanted some American history. So today we're talking about one of the most important, consequential presidents in American history, Franklin D. Roosevelt. I'm going to be using Wikipedia today to tell you more about him, and you should use Wikipedia too in English because it's a great strategy to find the vocabulary you need related to any topic, and you can go directly from your language to the English article language. Best yet is that Wikipedia is edited by real people using real English, so do it. And since we're describing a person today on Patreon, all patrons will be getting a special video, how to describe or introduce other people and how to describe and introduce yourself. So become a patron to get that special video and so many more. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, January 30th, 1882 to April 12th, 1945. Commonly known as FDR, was an American statesman and political leader who served as the 32nd President of the United States from 1933 until his death in 1945. A Democrat, he won a record 4 presidential elections and emerged as a central figure in world events during the mid-20th century. Roosevelt directed the United States government during most of the Great Depression, implementing his New Deal domestic agenda in response to the worst economic crisis in U.S. history. As a dominant leader of his party, he built the New Deal coalition, realigning American politics into the fifth party system and defining American liberalism throughout the middle third of the 20th century. His third and fourth terms were dominated by World War II. He is often rated by scholars as one of the 3 greatest U.S. presidents, along with George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. A statesman is just a political figure, someone who works or operates inside of politics. A politician. To realign means to reposition. To put yourself on a different path, to go a different way. And the thing FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, is most famous for is the New Deal. The New Deal was a program to stimulate economic growth, to lower unemployment, and to energize the U.S. economy. So that was a general overview. Now let's get an introduction to his life. Roosevelt was born in 1882 to a prominent Dutch-American New York family and attended Groton School. He went on to graduate from Harvard College in 1903 and attended Columbia Law School before practicing law in New York City. In 1905, he married Eleanor Roosevelt, and the couple went on to have 6 children. He won election to the New York State Senate in 1910 and then served as Assistant Secretary of the Navy under President Woodrow Wilson during World War I. Roosevelt was James M. Cox's running mate on the Democratic Party's 1920 national ticket, but Cox was defeated by Warren G. Harding. In 1921, Roosevelt contracted a paralytic illness, which left his legs permanently paralyzed. He attempted to recover from the illness and founded the treatment center in Warm Springs, Georgia, for people with poliomyelitis. Roosevelt returned to public office by winning election as governor of New York in 1928. He was in office from 1929 to 1933 and served as a reform governor, promoting programs to combat the economic crisis besetting the United States at the time. Okay, so this is Roosevelt up to the time he became president. When you want to become a politician, you need a running mate. If you're a president, it's your vice president. Your running mate is the person who assists you. In politics, the ticket means who is running, who is competing for that position. When we talk about the presidential campaign, the ticket or the national ticket means the president and the vice president. We can contract an illness. It means to get an illness. A reform means a change, and the verb here is to reform. And he was a reform governor. It means he was a governor who was trying to create change. The change here to overcome the Great Depression. The governor is the most important politician within a state. He basically controls or decides most of the state's policies. And for something to beset is talking about a difficulty or a problem. It troubles or threatens persistently all of the time. And that's exactly what the Great Depression did. So let's find out a little bit more about the presidency of FDR. In the 1932 presidential election, Roosevelt defeated Republican President Herbert Hoover in a landslide. Roosevelt took office while the United States was in the midst of the worst economic crisis in history. During the first 100 days of the 73rd United States Congress, Roosevelt spearheaded unprecedented federal legislation and issued a profusion of executive orders that instituted the New Deal, a variety of programs designed to produce relief, recovery, and and reform. He created numerous programs to provide relief to the unemployed and farmers while seeking economic recovery with the National Recovery Administration and other programs. He also instituted major regulatory reforms related to finance, communications, and labor, and presided over the end of Prohibition. The economy improved rapidly from 1933 to 1937, and Roosevelt won a landslide re-election in 1936, but the economy relapsed into a deep recession in 1937 to 1938. After the 1936 election, Roosevelt galvanized opposition by seeking passage of the Judiciary Reorganization Bill of 1937, which could have expanded the size of the Supreme Court of the United States. The bipartisan conservative coalition that formed in 1937 prevented passage of that bill and blocked the implementation of further New Deal programs and reforms. Major surviving programs and legislation implemented under Roosevelt include the Securities and Exchange Commission and Social Security. Okay, so Roosevelt did a lot. He undertook a lot of efforts while he was president. When he became president and when he ran for office again, he won by a landslide. Also, you can say he won in a landslide. This means by a huge margin. It was not very competitive. If you are in the midst of something, it means you are in the middle of something. You could also say that you are in the thick of something or in the thick of it. He spearheaded a lot of different programs. To spearhead means to drive them, to control and manage them with a lot of force and energy. He presided over the end of Prohibition. The Prohibition was a period in American history where the consumption and purchase of alcohol was completely illegal. He did a lot of this by galvanizing support. To galvanize means to excite or to shock someone into action, to encourage it. One last paragraph, and I'm going to read this one a bit faster. Roosevelt ran for re-election in 1940, and his victory made him the first and only president to serve for more than 2 terms. With World War II looming after 1938 with the Japanese invasion of China and the aggression of Nazi Germany, Roosevelt gave strong diplomatic and financial support to China, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union while remaining officially neutral. Following the Japanese surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, which he famously called a date which will live in infamy.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Roosevelt obtained a declaration of war on Japan the next day and a few days later on Germany and Italy. Assisted by his top aide Harry Hopkins with a very strong national support, he worked closely with British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, and Chinese Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek in leading the Allies against the Axis powers. He supervised the mobilization of the U.S. economy to support the war effort and implemented a Germany-first strategy, making the defeat of Germany a priority over that of Japan. He also initiated the development of the world's first atomic bomb and worked with other Allied leaders to lay the groundwork for the United Nations and other post-war institutions. Roosevelt's physical health seriously declined during the war years, and he died in April 1945, 11 weeks into his 4th term. The Axis powers surrendered to the Allies in the months following Roosevelt's death, during the presidency of Roosevelt's successor, Harry S. Truman. Alright, just a couple terms here. A term, in this case for politics, a term is the amount of time that you are in office. So in the US, if you are president, you have a 4-year term, and then you can run for re-election for another 4-year term. Not all terms are 4 years, it depends on the position. If something is looming, it means that it is menacing. It's kind of hanging over you and will probably happen in the future. And to lay the groundwork for something means to start to establish it, to create the foundation. Alright, to get more practice, remember you can get free audiobooks if you want to do that. You can also get free ebooks and a lot of other cool stuff. If you're on Facebook, those links are above the video. If you're on YouTube, those links are below.
Y'all should know by now that these videos are made possible thanks to my patrons like Jessica and Nora. If you want to be a part of this project, become a patron too, so you get more of the videos that you love.